The spotlight found him before he could find himself. At 5 years old, Michael Jackson stood on stages that towered over his small frame, singing words about love he couldn't yet understand. While other children played in sandboxes and rode bicycles down quiet streets, he rehearsed. Hour after hour, day after day, his father's voice echoed through their small Gary, Indiana home. Again, Joe Jackson would command, and Michael would sing again. His brothers knew the drill. They all did. But something different burned inside Michael, a gift so rare that it seemed to glow through his skin. The Jackson 5 exploded onto the music scene like fireworks in a dark sky. Suddenly, Michael wasn't just a child anymore. He was a phenomenon, a miracle, a money-making machine. Magazine covers shouted his name. Cameras followed his every move. Grown men in expensive suits made decisions about his life while he sat silently in corners, watching, learning, absorbing everything. He smiled for the photographers because that's what they wanted. He danced until his feet bled because that's what brought applause. But late at night, in hotel rooms that all looked the same, he pressed his face against cold windows and watched other children playing below. They laughed freely, without choreography, without an audience demanding perfection. His childhood slipped away like sand through fingers. There were no birthday parties with friends his own age, no lazy Saturday mornings watching cartoons, no chance to simply be young and foolish and free. Instead, there were recording sessions, television appearances, and concerts that stretched across continents. His voice brought joy to millions, but who was bringing joy to him? The question hung in the air, unanswered, as the years marched forward and the boy in the mirror grew older while somehow staying forever young inside. Success became his prison, though it looked like paradise to everyone watching. By his 20s, Michael Jackson had achieved what most artists only dream about. Thriller shattered every record imaginable, turning him into the biggest star planet Earth had ever seen. The album sold millions, then tens of millions, then numbers that seemed impossible to believe. His face appeared on every television screen, every magazine rack, every conversation. The moonwalk became more than a dance move, it became a cultural earthquake. But behind the sequin glove and the dazzling performances, something darker was growing. He looked in mirrors and saw a stranger staring back. The face that gazed at him didn't feel like his own. It belonged to Joe Jackson, to the father whose shadow he could never escape, to a past that haunted his present. Plastic surgery became his escape route, his way of rewriting the story written on his face. Each procedure was supposed to bring peace, supposed to create distance from the pain. Instead, it brought more questions, more whispers, more judgment from a world that couldn't understand the war raging inside him. The tabloids turned vicious, inventing stories that cut deeper than any knife a surgeon could wield. Sleep abandoned him. Night after night, he wandered through Neverland Ranch, the sprawling property he'd built as a monument to the childhood he never had. Carousel music played in the darkness. Amusement park rides stood silent and still, waiting for crowds that would never come. He'd created a fantasy world, but fantasies can't heal real wounds. His doctor prescribed pills for the insomnia, then more pills for the anxiety, then more pills to counter the effects of the first pills. A pharmaceutical spiral began, subtle at first, then consuming. His body, once a perfect instrument of rhythm and movement, started betraying him. The pain from years of dancing, from accidents on stage, from the physical toll of perfection, demanded chemical relief. And relief came in bottles with warning labels he chose not to read. The cruelest irony of Michael's life was this: the man who loved children more than anything became the man accused of harming them. It started with whispers, then grew into screams that echoed across every newspaper in the world. In 1993, allegations surfaced that would stain his name forever, regardless of truth. He insisted on his innocence with every fiber of his being, but innocence doesn't matter when the court of public opinion has already reached its verdict. The accusations tore through his soul like bullets, each one finding its mark, each one leaving scars that never fully healed. He settled the case financially, not because of guilt, but because his lawyers convinced him the trial would destroy what remained of his career. That decision haunted him for the rest of his life. To many, the settlement looked like an admission, a wealthy man buying his way out of consequences. But Michael saw it differently. He saw a system that would drag him through mud regardless of innocence, media that would profit from his suffering, and a public eager to watch a king fall from his throne. The money left his accounts, but the damage stayed forever. Parents who once let their children visit Neverland pulled them away. Friends distanced themselves, protecting their own reputations. The loneliness that had always lived inside him grew into something monstrous and consuming. His marriages came and went like seasons. Lisa Marie Presley, daughter of Elvis, understood fame's dark side in ways few could. Their love was real, but reality wasn't enough against the forces pulling them apart. Debbie Rowe gave him the children he desperately wanted, but their arrangement was more transactional than traditional. He held his babies close, covering their faces from cameras, determined to give them the privacy he never had. Prince, Paris, and Blanket became his whole world, the only pure thing left in a life contaminated by suspicion and judgment. For them, he tried to be strong. For them, he tried to keep fighting. But the weight kept growing heavier, and his shoulders were already breaking. By 2009, Michael Jackson needed a miracle. Financially devastated, emotionally shattered, physically deteriorating, he agreed to what would be his final act: 50 shows at London's O2 Arena, a comeback tour called This Is It. The announcement sent shockwaves through the entertainment world. Tickets sold out in hours, proving that despite everything, despite the scandals and the strangeness and the years away from the stage, people still wanted to see magic happen. They wanted to believe the king of pop could rise again. More importantly, Michael needed to believe it too. These concerts represented more than money or legacy, they represented redemption, a chance to show his children that their father was more than tabloid headlines and late-night jokes. Rehearsals became his entire existence. In a massive studio in Los Angeles, he worked with dancers decades younger, pushing his aging body to remember moves it had once performed effortlessly. The footage from those rehearsals shows flashes of the old Michael, the smooth spins, the sharp isolations, the undeniable presence that made cameras love him. But it also shows something troubling. His frame, always slender, had become skeletal. His energy, once boundless, now flickered like a dying bulb. He wore multiple layers of clothing even in the warm studio, always cold, always tired. His voice, though still beautiful, lacked the power it once possessed. Between takes, he would sit alone, head down, gathering strength for the next run-through. Behind the scenes, his personal physician, Dr. Conrad Murray, administered nightly doses of propofol, a powerful anesthetic meant only for surgical settings. Michael called it his milk, the only thing that could bring him the sleep his tortured mind denied him. Murray knew the danger. The drug required constant monitoring, equipment he didn't have in Michael's bedroom, training he didn't possess for long-term use. But Michael was desperate, and desperate people make desperate choices. Each night became a gamble, a bet that he'd wake up the next morning. The people around him saw the signs but felt powerless to stop the train already speeding toward disaster. The comeback tour loomed ahead, a deadline that couldn't be postponed, a commitment he couldn't escape. June the 25th, 2009, began like any other day in the house on North Carolwood Drive. Morning sunlight filtered through expensive curtains. Michael's children moved through rooms decorated with art and memories. But upstairs, in the master bedroom, something was terribly wrong. Dr. Murray found Michael unconscious, not breathing, skin already cooling. Panic flooded the room. Murray performed CPR incorrectly, wasting precious minutes. The 911 call came too late. Paramedics arrived to find a legend dying on a bed surrounded by bottles of prescription medications. They tried everything, but some journeys have no return ticket. The ambulance rushed him to UCLA Medical Center, sirens wailing through Los Angeles streets. Cameras appeared from nowhere, because cameras always found Michael Jackson. At the hospital, doctors worked frantically, but their efforts were formality. Michael Jackson was already gone, his heart stopped, his brilliant mind silenced, his tortured soul finally at rest. At 2:26 p.m., they called it. The announcement went out to a world not ready to receive it. Michael Jackson, 50 years old, was dead. The news spread faster than wildfire, faster than light, faster than belief. People around the globe stopped what they were doing and simply stared at screens, trying to process the impossible. The tears that followed weren't just tears of grief, they were tears of guilt, of recognition, of collective shame. Millions had mocked him, judged him, reduced his complex humanity to punchlines and Halloween costumes. Now, with him gone, they remembered the music, the magic, the joy he'd spent his entire life creating for them. His memorial service at the Staples Center became one of the most watched events in television history. Paris, his daughter, stood before the world with tears streaming down her young face and said simply, "Daddy has been the best father you could ever imagine." Those words shattered hearts everywhere. The truth behind Michael's tears was devastatingly simple: he had been human. Deeply flawed, certainly, but also deeply gifted, deeply wounded, deeply misunderstood. He'd spent 5 decades giving everything to a world that took and took and took, then condemned him when he had nothing left to give. His music remains, timeless and powerful, a legacy that will outlive all the scandals. But the man himself, the boy who just wanted to play, who needed love more than fame, who carried unbearable pain behind that famous smile, is gone. And in his absence, we're left with uncomfortable questions about what we demand from our icons, what we take from our heroes, and whether the price of immortality is always a shortened life. The spotlight that found him so young never truly let him go, burning bright until there was nothing left but tears and memories and music that will echo forever.